Kylian Mbappé, one of the biggest football stars in the world, is used to being recognized everywhere he goes. But what happens when a simple mechanic, unaware of his identity, treats him just like anyone else in a city as big as London? Destiny can play surprising tricks and change lives forever. Carlos had always been proud of his small mechanic workshop nestled on the edge of a bustling London neighborhood. With worn hands and a greying beard, he was a familiar face to anyone who had suffered a car breakdown in the vicinity. His workshop, a cluttered haven of tools and car parts, had grown from a youthful dream into a reality that was as gritty and enduring as his own calluses. The routine at Carlos's workshop began early and stretched throughout the long hours of the day. Each morning he would pull up the large metal door with a reverberating clank that echoed down the quiet street. Inside, the scent of oil and metal welcomed him like an old friend. Despite his deep knowledge and efficient work, the workshop's financial ledger told a different story. Stacks of unpaid bills peeked from beneath manuals on his cluttered desk, and the old cash register seldom saw the fullness it once did in better days. One chilly afternoon, as Carlos was bent under the hood of a sputtering 1982 Ford Fiesta, his longtime friend and occasional freelance mechanic Tim strolled in. Tim's face wore a look of concern that didn't quite match his usual jovial greeting. "Carlos," Tim started, his voice tinged with hesitation as he leaned against a tool-strewn workbench. "Have you had a moment to look at the books lately? I know it's not my place, but things seem a bit tight." Carlos straightened up, wiping his oily hands on a rag. I know. It's been rough, but what can I do? I'm not about to start overcharging or cutting corners. It's not the way I do things." Tim nodded, understanding his friend's stance all too well. "I respect that, Carlos, I really do. But there's talk about the new auto shop opening up 2 streets over. They'll be offering some aggressive pricing. I'm just worried about how you'll compete with that." Carlos sighed, the weight of his predicament momentarily tightening his features. "Yeah, I've heard, but we've got something they don't trust, and quality. Those go a long way in this business," he said, even as doubt shadowed his words. The threat of closure was real, and it haunted him more than he cared to admit. Yet, despite the financial strain, his commitment to his ethics remained unshakable. Carlos believed in fair pricing and meticulous workmanship. It was more than a business model. It was a creed deeply etched into his character. As the day drew to its close, Carlos stood at the workshop's entrance, watching the street lamps flicker to life. The neighborhood was changing, and so was the temper of consumer trust. Yet his resolve hardened. This workshop was his life's work, a testament to a dying breed of honest craftsmanship. Whatever the coming days held, Carlos was determined to face them with the integrity that had built his shop's foundation. Carlos was about to close up the shop for the day when dark clouds rolled in, shrouding the London skyline in a grim overcast. He peered out the window, watching as the first drops of rain began to pelt the glass. The weather report he had caught earlier on the radio resonated in his mind, warning of a downpour and potential thunderstorms lasting well into the night. He sighed heavily, already envisioning the usual flood issues that plagued the lower streets surrounding his workshop. This weather wouldn't make things easier for anyone, especially not with the looming financial pressures. Just as Carlos reached for the lights, a sharp knock at the front door halted his movements. The hour was late, much too late for customers, he thought. His brow creased with curiosity and a hint of concern. Approaching cautiously, he unlocked and pulled open the door, only to find a man soaked through, his coat dripping and a baseball cap pulled down low, shadowing his features. The stranger looked up, water streaming down his face, yet there was a kind familiarity in his eyes that caught Carlos off guard. "I'm terribly sorry to bother you at this hour," the man began, his accent a refined blend that hinted at distant origins. My car broke down just up the street, and I could really use some help. I tried calling for assistance, but nobody's available because of the storm. Could I possibly use your phone, or even better, could you take a look if you have the time? Carlos studied the man for a moment, trying to place why he felt oddly significant. However, the mechanic's nature wasn't one to turn away someone in need. Nodding, he stepped aside, gesturing the stranger into the workshop. Of course, come in. I can't leave someone stranded in this weather. Let's see what we can do about your car, Carlos said. The man thanked him profusely, stepping into the warmth of the workshop. As Carlos led the way to where the shop's phone hung on the wall, he couldn't shake the lingering feeling that he knew this visitor from somewhere. Little did he know, the rainy night had brought with it an encounter that would resonate far beyond the walls of his struggling workshop. As Carlos ushered the stranger under the dim glow of the workshop lights, the man, who introduced himself as Mbappé, pointed outside to where his car was visible, hazard lights blinking feebly through the rain-drenched darkness. His car, an older model that clearly had seen better days, sat awkwardly tilted to one side on the curb. Mbappé's request for help was met with a nod from Carlos, who was already pulling on his heavy waterproof coat. "Let's have a look." "Then," Carlos said, determination lining his voice as he grabbed his portable toolbox and flashlight, "no one should be left alone out there on a night like this." Mbappé followed closely, his anxious gaze fixed on Carlos as they made their way to the malfunctioning vehicle. The rain soaked through every layer they wore, chilling them to the bone, but Carlos's thoughts were focused solely on the task ahead. Carlos assessed the situation with a practiced eye, noting how the car sagged on one side, likely due to a flat tire compounded by some engine issue that prevented it from moving to a safer location. After setting up a makeshift shelter with a large umbrella wedged against the car's frame, Carlos began his work. His tools clinked and clanged in the quiet of the night, each sound a testament to his resolve. He moved swiftly to change the tire first, the jack lifting the car with a groan that competed with the swirling wind. With the tire replaced, he propped open the hood to examine the engine, his flashlight cutting through the darkness to illuminate the heart of the vehicle. Mbappé watched in silence, his earlier apprehension giving way to a quiet respect as he observed Carlos's methodical approach to diagnostics and repair. Despite the late hour and worsening weather, Carlos's dedication never wavered. He checked the spark plugs, the oil levels, and the battery, making adjustments and cleaning connections as he went. Each movement of Carlos's hands was sure and steady, a dance of expertise and careful attention that had been honed over countless engines and even more car troubles. As the moments ticked by under the relentless rain, Carlos found himself grateful for the relative quiet that allowed him to focus entirely on the task at hand. The usual daytime bustle of the workshop, filled with phone calls and drop-ins, seemed worlds away. Here, it was just him, the tools, and the car, a return to the basics of his profession, which he cherished deeply. Finally, after tightening the last bolt and giving the engine a thorough wipe-down, Carlos closed the hood with a satisfied nod. He instructed Mbappé to give the car a start. The engine sputtered once, a hesitating grumble in the silence, then roared to life. It sounded clean and promising. "It runs better than it has in months," Mbappé exclaimed, his voice mixed with relief and newfound admiration. "Thank you, Carlos. I can't tell you how much this means to me." Carlos simply shrugged, his own smile hidden partly under the shadow of his cap as he began to collect his tools. "That's what we're here for. No one should be stranded, especially not on a night like this." As they walked back to the workshop, the crack of thunder rolled overhead, a reminder of the storm that continued to rage around them. Yet inside Carlos's workshop, there was a warm sense of accomplishment and the forging of a new connection, built unexpectedly but most assuredly on the foundation of kindness and skill. Carlos finished tightening the last nut on the repaired tire and stepped back to assess his work. The steady, rhythmic sound of his tools laying to rest in the metal toolbox marked the end of the repair session. He wiped the grease off his hands onto his already stained apron, feeling a sense of satisfaction at another job well done. Mbappé, visibly relieved, approached Carlos with a broad smile. "I can't thank you enough," he said earnestly, the raindrops mingling with his gratitude. "You've really saved me tonight. It's more than just fixing a car. You've restored my peace of mind." Carlos nodded modestly, accustomed to such thanks, yet always appreciative of the acknowledgement. "It's all in a day's, night's work," he replied. Helping someone in need was the core of his job, extended hours or not. Mbappé reached into his pocket and pulled out a wad of cash, holding it out to Carlos. "Please take this for going above and beyond tonight." Carlos looked at the money, then firmly shook his head. "Just the standard fee for the repair," he insisted. He quoted an amount fair for the work, but significantly less than what Mbappé offered. "I don't take extra for helping someone out of a tight spot." Mbappé's eyes widened slightly. Not used to such refusal, but he respected Carlos's integrity and reluctantly agreed, handing him the standard fee. Though his face remained composed, his mind noted the unusual character he had encountered. In this hardy mechanic, with the bill settled, Carlos helped Mbappé pack up the last of the tools from the rain-soaked ground. The storm seemed to subside a bit, a soft drizzle taking the place of the earlier downpour. Mbappé thanked Carlos once more before climbing into his car. With a final wave, he drove off into the dimly lit street, leaving Carlos in the quiet. Aftermath. After locking up the shop, Carlos trudged through the puddles toward his home. The day's exhaustion began to seep into his bones. As he walked, he reflected on the evening's unexpected encounter, Mbappé's gratitude, his willingness to offer more, and his acceptance of the refusal. These were not common in Carlos's experience, yet he felt a warm sense of pride and contentment as he considered the profound simplicity of the moment, a man aiding another regardless of the hour or the weather. It was these instances, Carlos realized, that reaffirmed his commitment to his trade and his approach to life. There was something deeply fulfilling about being able to offer solace through skill, about being the dependable figure in someone's story on an otherwise stormy night. Even without knowing Mbappé's identity or his background, which bore an intriguing air of mystery, Carlos felt a genuine connection, the kind that occasionally bridged the gap between strangers, making them familiar in the essential ways. As the lights of his modest home came into view, these reflections accompanied him, settling in his mind like the calming rain around him. Carlos arrived at his workshop the next morning under a sky scrubbed clean by the night storms. As he turned the corner onto his street, his eyes widened in astonishment. A sizable crowd had gathered outside the usually quiet workshop. Among the throng, he spotted cameras and microphones, indicating the presence of journalists. Something significant was obviously afoot, and he had no inkling what it could be. Pushing through a sea of faces and whispered speculations, Carlos unlocked the shop door, fumbling slightly with his keys, as curious eyes followed every movement. The unusual audience buzzed with palpable excitement that Carlos couldn't yet understand. As he rolled up the shutter, a couple of journalists stepped forward, greeting him not with inquiries about car troubles, but about his interaction the previous night. Confused, Carlos wiped his hands on his apron. "Is this about the man I helped last night?" he asked, unsure how a routine act of service had sparked such interest. "Yes, Mr. Carlos. That man was Kylian Mbappé," a reporter informed him, her voice tinged with excitement. A renowned philanthropist known for his substantial contributions to disaster relief and community projects globally. The story of your kindness and refusal to overcharge him, even after knowing who he was, has gone viral. How do you feel about this attention?" Carlos felt a rush of bewilderment. His mind grappled with the revelation that his simple act of decency was now public knowledge, linked to a figure of global esteem. He struggled to gather his thoughts, feeling the weight of unexpected fame. As the morning progressed, the story of Carlos's integrity and Mbappé's appreciation continued to spread. Snippets of their exchange from the previous night were shared across social media platforms, with users praising Carlos for his honesty and down-to-earth nature. Comments poured in, lauding him as a true hero and an example of genuine character in today's world. Local news outlets ran segments detailing Carlos's long-standing commitment to fair pricing and quality work. They highlighted how his small workshop stood as a beacon of trustworthiness in a community that was often overshadowed by flashier, less scrupulous businesses. This media reaction fueled a large crowd to line up outside his workshop, not all in need of car repairs, but many simply wanting to witness or support the integrity they had seen portrayed online. The outpouring of public support was overwhelming to Carlos. This unexpected turn of events left him a mix of proud, embarrassed, and slightly anxious about the spotlight now focused on him. The world seemed to have paused to commend what he saw as merely living by his principles that until now had felt increasingly sidelined in a fast-paced, often superficial environment. This swarm of attention promised a busy day ahead, and as Carlos looked over the crowd, some of whom held banners praising his ethics and others quietly observing him with respect, he realized that his life might not be the same after this morning. The mundane routine he cherished had been transformed, possibly forever, by a single act of kindness on a rainy night. As the days unfolded after the media frenzy, Carlos noticed the immediate shift in his daily operations. Word of his honorable dealings had spread far and wide, compelling customers from all across London and even from neighboring towns to visit his small workshop. Each morning, an array of cars, ranging from old beaters to newer, more luxurious models, lined up outside his door. People weren't just coming for repairs. They were coming to support a businessman who epitomized integrity. Carlos watched in amazement as his appointment book filled up for weeks in advance, unlike ever before. He had to hire temporary help to manage the front desk, handling calls and scheduling appointments. His hands, so used to the feel of steel and grease, now shook hands with grateful patrons, who sometimes seemed more interested in meeting him than in getting their cars fixed. Each handshake, each smile from a customer reinforced the shocking turn his life had taken. Carlos felt a complex mix of pride and surreal gratitude that this newfound appreciation for his ethics had brought him such bustling business. Amidst this whirlwind of activity, Carlos often caught himself pausing, a bemused smile crossing his face as he took in the bustling scene. His workshop had become the talk of the town. The irony was not lost on him. His refusal to change his honest ways, even when faced with the potential closure of his business, had ultimately saved it. One particularly busy afternoon, as Carlos was explaining to a customer the intricacies of a brake system repair, he spotted Mbappé making his way through the crowded garage. Mbappé's presence was unmistakable, even if he tried to appear inconspicuous among the throngs of people. When their eyes met, Mbappé's face lit up with recognition, and he made a beeline for Carlos. "I had to come back," Mbappé said, his voice carrying a mix of joy and solemnity. "After that night, and seeing all this," he gestured around at the busy shop, "I just wanted to say thank you in person, to show you how much your help meant. Not just to me, but to everyone who has heard your story." Carlos wiped his hands on his overalls, a bit embarrassed by the fuss. "I was just doing my job, same as I would for anyone," he said. But his heart swelled. The impact of that rainy night, helping a stranger, continued to resonate far deeper than he had imagined. Mbappé nodded, understanding the humility that was so core to Carlos's nature. I know, Carlos. That's exactly why it's so important. It's rare and so very necessary, he paused, looking around again before continuing. And there's another reason I came back. I want you to know who I really am beyond the basics. You might have heard. Carlos listened intently as Mbappé shared more about his work, about the foundations he supported, and how his experience that stormy night had inspired a new initiative focusing on supporting small businesses led by principled leaders like Carlos. It wasn't just about financial aid, but about creating networks of support and learning. As Mbappé spoke, Carlos felt the weight of the moment, understanding that this connection might lead to new opportunities, not just for him, but for others, who held firm to their morals amidst adversity. The exchange marked a significant moment, a realization that sometimes it's the simplest acts that lead to the most consequential changes. By the time Mbappé left, promising to stay in touch and work together on his new initiative, Carlos felt an overwhelming sense of possibility. He leaned against the counter, watching as his team interacted with customers, laughter occasionally rising above the sounds of clanking tools and humming engines. The day drew to a close with Carlos locking up the shop later than usual. The echo of the rolling shutter was louder in the quiet street now empty of the day's earlier crowds. He knew his life had changed. The workshop was no longer just a place to fix cars, but a symbol of integrity, a beacon for those who valued honesty over expediency. His overwhelming but grateful reaction to the events following that night's act of kindness was a powerful affirmation that staying true to oneself could indeed reshape one's destiny. The buzz around Carlos's workshop only intensified as the reunion between him and Mbappé caught the eye of both local and national media outlets. News vans became a regular fixture outside the small, once quiet shop, with journalists eager to capture every detail of the continuing story. The feel-good factor of the narrative, mixed with the high-profile nature of Mbappé's philanthropic work, made for compelling television and social media content. Interviews with Carlos, his staff, and even regular customers filled the airwaves, each segment highlighting the mechanic's unwavering integrity and the unexpected friendship that had sprung from a rainy night's act of kindness. As the story gained momentum, so did the interest in both men's backgrounds and futures. This media coverage not only celebrated their burgeoning partnership, but also hinted at upcoming projects that Mbappé teased during his interviews, projects that promised to benefit communities and small businesses. The air around the workshop was charged with excitement and a sense of anticipation about what was yet to come. In the midst of this whirlwind of attention, Mbappé arrived one morning with a special gift for Carlos. After the customary greetings and a quick look over a car in the midst of repairs, Mbappé presented Carlos with 2 VIP tickets to a major sporting event. But it wasn't just any event. Mbappé owned a prominent sports club, and these tickets were for the season's biggest game, known for its electric atmosphere and high-profile attendees. Along with the tickets, Mbappé handed Carlos a contract. It was an offer for Carlos's workshop to become the official car service provider for Mbappé's entire club. The contract detailed not only generous terms, but also highlighted the visibility and endorsement Carlos's workshop would receive. It was a massive opportunity for Carlos, one that could secure his business's future and provide an even wider platform to showcase his work ethic and reliability. Overwhelmed yet grateful, Carlos accepted the offer. Handshakes were exchanged, and Mbappé's smile was as broad as the promise that lay ahead. Carlos realized the potential impact this contract could have, not just on his own future, but also on his community. He could hire more locals, train apprentices, and even expand his operations to serve more customers. The benefits would ripple out, helping uplift not just his own life, but those around him. News of Carlos's acceptance and the details of the gift spread quickly, as did enthusiasm from the community. To celebrate, Carlos decided to throw a gathering at the workshop. Streamers were hung, and tables laden with food from local vendors were set up. The community came out in full force, with local musicians providing entertainment and everyone sharing in the joyous atmosphere. It was more than a celebration of good fortune. It was a testament to what could be achieved when integrity and hard work were recognized and rewarded. Laughter filled the air. Stories about Carlos's younger days floated around, and people spoke animatedly about the impact the workshop had on their lives. Amidst the festivities, Carlos took a moment to look around. He saw faces filled with happiness and hope, felt the genuine connections he had fostered over the years, and knew deep in his heart that this was the real reward. As the celebration continued into the evening, Carlos mingled with friends, family, and customers, all sharing in the collective pride and excitement. With every handshake, every pat on the back, Carlos felt not just the weight of the moment, but the light, uplifting promise of what was still to come. The workshop might have been small, but its impact was immeasurable. And now, thanks to Mbappé's belief and support, its future was as bright as the smiles of those gathered to celebrate that day. Carlos awoke early, the morning sun barely cresting over the London skyline, casting long shadows across his bedroom. Today was not just another day. It was the day he would attend the football game, an event he had been anticipating ever since Mbappé handed him the tickets. His excitement was palpable as he laid out his clothes for the game, opting for his best jacket and a clean pair of trousers. In the back of his mind, he planned the day, leaving early to avoid the infamous London traffic, meeting Mbappé at the designated spot, and soaking in every moment of what promised to be a thrilling match. As he packed a small bag with essentials, binoculars he'd never used, a program guide he'd picked up earlier in the week, and a camera to capture the moments, he couldn't help but feel a sense of culmination. It wasn't just about the game. It was about marking the success and recognition he had achieved through his hard work and integrity. Meanwhile, at his workshop, the influx of funds and attention had allowed Carlos to initiate much-needed renovations. The aging roof that had long threatened leaks was finally being replaced, and the walls, once drab and peeling, were freshly painted in bright, welcoming colors. The front desk area was expanded and modernized, with new computer systems replacing the dated cash registers and filing cabinets. Carlos had even installed a comfortable waiting area with Wi-Fi and a small cafe corner where customers could enjoy a cup of coffee while waiting for their cars. These upgrades not only improved the functionality of the workshop, but also elevated its atmosphere, making it a more appealing place for both old and new clients. This was crucial now that Carlos's clientele included even more diverse and higher-profile individuals whose expectations were certainly higher than his long-time local customers. Among these were individuals who, encouraged by the media coverage and Mbappé's endorsement, came from various parts of the city and beyond, bringing cars that ranged from high-end sports models to classic vintage cars. Carlos found himself navigating conversations about maintenance packages for luxury cars one moment and discussing the best care for restored engines the next. His commitment to honest, quality service remained unchanged, but the scope of his work had undoubtedly expanded. Handling this increased attention and the diverse expectations of his new clientele also meant Carlos had to step outside his comfort zone when it came to public relations. Recognizing his discomfort with the spotlight, Mbappé had arranged for a media consultant to provide Carlos with training on handling publicity. This training included how to speak on camera, managing tricky questions from journalists, and even maintaining his privacy while being a public figure. The consultant, A friendly woman named Rebecca spent hours with Carlos, role-playing interviews, and advising him on how to articulate his core principles in a way that was both humble and compelling. Remember, Carlos, every interview is an opportunity to tell your story your way. Stick to your truths, she advised, leaving Carlos feeling more prepared, though still a bit apprehensive about the limelight. Each of these events was a step in what seemed an entirely new chapter of Carlos's life, one marked by recognition and new opportunities, but grounded in the same principles that had defined his character for years. While the game awaited him with the promise of a brief escape and celebration, his roots remained firmly in the workshop, amidst the grease, the gears, and the community that had supported him through it all. As he locked his house and headed to the stadium, Carlos carried with him a sense of pride and readiness for whatever lay ahead, ready to cheer on his team and embrace the unfolding narrative of his life. Life can change in the most unexpected ways, and kindness always comes back in ways we never imagine. If this story inspired you, make sure to subscribe for more powerful tales that touch the heart. Your support means everything. May God bless you.